Hey there, stars, it's Dear Younger Me, where we look back and talk about the then and now. I'm your host, Megan Scott, and today we're keeping up with our discussion regarding the COVID-19 coronavirus. In this episode, we're going to be exploring the complexity of maintaining and managing relationships in a socially distant society. I'm going to be bringing up 3 types of relationships, so there's a little something for everyone in this episode, and because of that, instead of just reading 1 diary entry, I'll be reading 3. Yes, 1 for each type of relationship, so this is your chance to pause this, go use the bathroom, or grab a snack now, because the fun and giggles stop right about now. On the last episode of Dear Younger Me. Even as we sat at the table together, it felt incredibly lonely and surreal as we got the email.
Beginning Monday, March 16th, Lando will move to online instruction for undergraduate and graduate students until further notice.
It's March 13th. We've been told to go home, and I've packed my sister and myself into Justin, my tiny 01 Chevy Prism. The email said that we were going to try to be back to in-person classes as soon as possible. So my sister has a little suitcase of her things and a book bag. She was in the mindset of, we'll be back. It's okay, it's just a break. On the other hand, all I could pull out of that email was, until further notice. So as the panic packer I am, I have a heavy majority of my things jammed into my car. To me, we weren't coming back, and I was more or less saying goodbye. After driving for 2 hours, we finally get home around 9 p.m. I was exhausted, shocked, and most importantly, devastated. May 3rd, 2018. That's 18-year-old me again. I wrote a lot that year because I had a lot of emotions that year. I was a senior in high school, counting down the days till summer, and had just ended my first serious relationship about 2 months prior. So, naturally, as any angsty artsy teen does, I wrote some poems. Maybe one day the sky will split, and the rains that trickle down will touch both of our lips at the same time. The sun will kiss both of our bodies and blind both of our sight. Maybe one day the moon will make way and leave a sky for us to view. I will look up, and so might you. And you shall reach like I wish to, and cry like I do. And neither of us would ever be the wiser. For as long as I can remember, I have been a hopeless romantic. Maybe it was the sappy words of love from poets much more talented than me. Maybe it was the gushy teen books and movies I buried myself in. Maybe it was watching my parents split. All I know is that I wanted a happy ending just as much as the next make-believe princess. Now, flash forward. My boyfriend and I have been together for roughly 2 years now. For a majority of it, we hadn't fought. I think mainly because we both understood each other's opinions and were not in the business of stepping on toes. He thought what he thought, and I thought what I thought. But the night we got home, I get into my room, curl up in my bed, and immediately start weeping. Not crying, weeping. For myself and many other students and educators across the world, this was not an early summer. This was an unforeseen loss, and I was absolutely in mourning. My boyfriend, on the other hand, comes from an upbringing in which college is almost out of the question. He had been working and providing for himself and house since he was 16, so it had made him a little rough to the idea of loss, in my sense of loss. And so this guy who was ecstatic to get out of high school in 2017 was baffled that I was so hurt over being sent home early from college. I won't go into all of the details of the fight, but that night was one of the most intense things we had ever dealt with as a couple. And I don't know if we've fully moved past it. Things were said and feelings got hurt, and apologies came and went through clenched jaws and closed teeth through little phone screens. With quarantine, we have now not seen each other in well over a month, and let's just say it hasn't gotten easier. We love each other, definitely, but it is rough. I know podcasts are supposed to be helpful, but I'm still kind of in the middle of this, so I can't quite tell you how the outcome looks. I guess that's just how these things kind of work, huh? Maybe in a later episode I'll be able to revisit this. Who knows?
March 8th, 2017.
This one's a tough one. I won't go into all of the details behind this entry because they're simply not mine to share. All that matters is that there were 3 17-year-old girls scared of losing each other.
Nothing hurts more than seeing them cry. Because it's been us 3 since the very beginning. Us at our highs, us at our lows. Us when 1 was high and 2 were low, and us when 2 were high and 1 was low. It's always been us, and it will always be us. And it hurts when one of us isn't here, because then we're not whole.
My friends and I have been friends since 2007, when I moved to Rock Hill. I was an army brat, and so I was used to friendships not lasting for more than a year, if that. I came into 2nd grade prepping myself for more temporary friends, and I came out with the 2 people I can confidently say are my lifelong sisters, Halima and Toby. We were inseparable, and if one of us went through something, so did the other 2. All 3 of us have been grounded as a unit before, if that puts things in perspective, and nothing could tear that unit apart until high school graduation came. We were all still close, but we didn't see each other nearly as often. Then college came. Halima and I went to different colleges in the state, and Toby stayed in Rock Hill. Now we had a few hours between us, and we were all so busy with work or school. To top it all, a little under a year ago, Toby went to visit with her dad in Arizona, and she decided to stay. Our lives were changing, and things were happening without the others to be there. On March 18th, 2020, Toby came home for a week. We had a sleepover like the good old days, and I even worked as a photographer for her grandparents' vow renewal. We were happy, but part of it was tough, knowing that the dynamic had changed and we only had a few days to really get everything off of our chests. Our lives had all changed so drastically. There were new characters in all of our stories, characters we didn't recognize. We realized quickly just how much of life gets filtered out through the communication that is distance, and it was scary. I remember getting the phone call about my internship. I had been working as an intern for a t-shirt company, and I had been loving it. Since having to leave campus, I had switched to working from home, which I had done before no problem, but the company was at stake. We lost a lot of production warehouses as the country started to hunker down, and the money just wasn't there. A lot of people had to go, obviously including the interns. My boss called me while I was in the car with Halima and Toby, and I'm honestly so grateful that she did. Situations were different. We were different people now, but they cared just the same. We continued on with our night, as we usually would, and I didn't give it a second thought. They were there, and that's all that mattered to me. I guess what I'm hoping is that everything else in the world will be just like that. Distant, changing, but we'll come out loving each other just the same, if not more. Distance is supposed to make the heart grow fonder. So,
June 23rd, 2016.
I think the last time I was truly cut off from what I considered my normal day-to-day was when I spent the summer in the Philippines with my family. I was 16 at the time.
I'm having a lot of fun here, but Lord, do I miss home. I don't believe I've ever actually been homesick before. Guess I have to be across the planet for a long amount of time before it kicks in. I miss Coda, or any dogs at the very least. I haven't touched a dog since we dropped Coda off. I miss my car. I miss driving. I miss Avi and Toby and all of my friends. I miss having inside jokes, or understanding what someone said when they said a joke. I miss Southern hospitality, smiling at strangers on the street and them smiling back. I miss hearing, "I like your hair," or "your shirt, yes," and saying it back to strangers.
I feel like if you couldn't relate to the feeling of distance from your significant other or the feeling of adaptation from your friends, most of us can definitely relate to this new form of cramped when it comes to being at home with family. There's a new dynamic when it's nonstop family time. No going out, no hanging out with friends, not even a break to go to class. Unless you're an essential worker, family time is 24 hours. Comparing quarantine to my vacation in the Philippines sounds super weird and totally privileged when I say it out loud. So I want to recognize that I am extremely fortunate at this time. I have a roof over my head, food in my stomach, and a safe, loving family to live with. Almost all of my issues are emotional and mental. While I'm situationally sound, I do feel it's necessary to talk about how we feel. When we were in the Philippines, I was super happy to be with my family, but sometimes I did want a break. I didn't know anyone that I wasn't related to, and I never learned Tagalog growing up, so it wasn't like I could go make new friends to hang out with. And not knowing the language also meant being conversationally isolated for the summer, whether we were at the house with family or in a crowded mall. There would be a lot of sound, but unless someone stopped to translate for us, there would be no substance. The culture was way different from southern USA too. No smiling at strangers, no, hey, how you doing? In a lot of ways, it felt very similar to walking around the grocery store with these masks on. No one can see you smiling, and hey, how you doing is just another form of breathing in someone's direction, so we don't do that either. I still don't really know Tagalog, so while my mom and my lola, grandmother, talk to each other and to our family members over Skype, my sister and I still feel that same type of weird isolation in a full room. Tension is higher now, though. For as long as I've been alive and before that, Lola has been a very anxious person. Her biggest anxiety is getting sick. She is scared of pollen getting her sick, people getting her sick, the wind being too strong and getting her sick. She was wearing a face mask way before any of this started. Part of that is because face masks are just a common thing in Asia to protect from poor air quality. However, now it's hard to differ what is a pollen allergy or the early symptoms of infection. People can most definitely get you sick, and being within 6 feet of someone who coughs means that, yes, even the wind is dangerous. Her worst nightmare came to fruition, and as a 78-year-old woman with anxiety that solely watches game shows and news reports that say the elderly are the most at risk, I think you can imagine that it's not the most comforting. What's worse is, as I stated before, I'm Filipino, which means that most of my family is in the medical field. Poor timing for a joke, but here we are. Anyway, my mom is a nurse at Atrium Health, Carolina Medical Center, Maine, which is where the Carolinas transfer their really bad patients. So while my mom sits and works to help fight this, Lola is worried about her being exposed, and she definitely voices this. I talked to my mom about how this was all impacting her, and she talked about how nurses are definitely all scared, but that as a nurse,
you have to stay calm, because you have to be the calm one between you and your patient.
it's a lot of responsibility. Being not only a physical shield from the virus, but acting as a mental one as well. A lot of that mindset gets taken home. She puts on a brave face, which is something I want to be able to model after when I'm a parent. But I know it hurts. We're not allowed to hug her once she gets home anymore. And that's something we didn't even have to give up in the Philippines. I said cramped. And yes, it does feel very cramped at times. But there are also aspects that feel incredibly far, even under the same roof. Dear younger me, if there is anything that you are going to excel at, it's people. And if there is anything you are going to forever struggle with and be confused with, it's people. Take a second to understand things, but never let your voice go unheard. I know you're going to let yourself bite your tongue more than a few times. If I could convince you to change that, I would. But I also know you're going to say the wrong thing out of anger way too many times. Find a balance. And find time. Your friends shouldn't have to be gone for months on end for you to appreciate them. All of our lives are going by fast, so make sure you're keeping up with theirs. And hug your family every chance you get. Hug everyone you love every chance you get, because connection is a high demand commodity these days. With self-love, future you. Dear Younger Me wants to go ahead and thank our sponsors once again, the Pod Class with Paul Crutcher and XLR Land University Radio. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here. We also want to go ahead and thank you, the listeners. We would probably still be here without you because this is in fact for a grade, but what a booster to see someone listening. We are so happy that you stuck around for episode 2 and hope that you'll stick around for episode 3, the conclusion of this series. In episode 3, we'll be talking about faith in isolation. Maybe that sounds super intriguing to you. If so, sign up to be a part of our community. You'll get updates for when new episodes upload or when new blog posts come up. That way you'll be able to see the ins and outs behind each podcast, because there really is only so much we can fit into these. Till next time, bye.